Hi, Peter Jones, Chartered Surveyor, author and property investor, and there's a really interesting article on the BBC website this week all about how the government are going to crack down on rogue landlords. Now, when you dive into the article, when you start looking at what it says in detail, and by the way, it doesn't say an awful lot in detail, what it's trying to suggest is, in lay language, that the rules around licensing HMOs is going to change. Whereas at the moment there's mandatory licensing for properties which are 3 stories or more, or where there's 6 inhabitants or more, the government are thinking of changing that to any size property where there's 5 people, as long as there's 5 people from at least two different households. They're also talking about bringing in minimum room sizes, which is probably a good thing in fairness. But also within the article, there's reference to the fact that there's Statute which is going to go through Parliament, if they can get it through, presumably notwithstanding Brexit, which seems to be clogging the system up. But there's a statute waiting to go through which will deal with the implication being landlords who burgle properties, landlords who harass tenants, landlords who bribe tenants, and landlords who threaten tenants, which is very interesting. So we'll see what comes of that. Now, the premise behind all of this is that the government want to crack down on rogue landlords, apparently. The problem with that, of course, is who is it who's going to abide by the statute? Well, the good landlords. Who isn't going to care one iota about a new statute or new laws and regulations? Who doesn't ever take account of laws, regulations, guidelines and good practice? Well, rogue landlords. Rogue landlords do not abide by the law. So you can pass as many laws as you want, but unless there's some way of enforcing them, the rogue landlords are just going to carry on being rogue landlords, surely. That's the thing which the government needs to get their head around. Now, the last paragraph of this article is also very interesting because there's a mention of Jeremy Corbyn. Now, I don't know whether this is new or whether they're just rehashing what he was saying at the Labour Party conference in October. But basically, what it quotes Jeremy as saying is that he wants tenants to have longer tenancies and he wants to get rid of the rights of landlords to be able to evict tenants for no reason, as he puts it. He's trying to make sure that there's no retaliatory evictions. Really interesting point, because surely a landlord, if they're going to use the property for good purposes, like they want to sell it, or if a landlord wants to renovate a property, which are the grounds basically which we've got at the moment for getting property back, isn't that a good thing? And all this talk about retaliatory evictions is interesting because surely most of the time what the landlord is actually retaliating for is the tenant not paying their rent, and that's probably what we need to be passing laws about. But there we go. Landlords are never going to be popular. The point, I think, of this article is that the political winds are still blowing against us and things are changing. Whereas before there was a lot of talk about how the how there was a lot of talk before about how the private renters sector was really important to the country, how we needed to have flexibility and mobility of labour and all that kind of stuff. It all seems to be going by the by. Landlords are just bad news. So there we go. Anyway, be interested to see what you think. If you've got any thoughts on that, then please comment below. Here's to successful property investing.